Welcome back, everyone. We're going on another deep dive today. This time, we're traveling back in time to the 14th through 17th centuries.
Ah, yes. A fascinating period.
We're going to be exploring India, specifically the regional empires that were really leaving their mark back then.
And not just on a map, right?
Exactly. On the landscape itself, we're talking urban development, architecture, really digging into how these empires used their cities and buildings as big, bold statements.
Statements of power, cultural identity, you name it. It's all there, reflected in the architecture. It's like each structure was carefully crafted to tell a story, to reinforce their position in the world.
We've got a ton of historical accounts and architectural studies to help us unravel this. So where should we begin?
Well, you can't discuss Mughal architecture without acknowledging the influence of gardens, especially with Babur.
Babur, the founder of the Mughal dynasty.
The one and only.
That's not the first thing that comes to mind when I think about powerful empires. Gardens seem a bit, I don't know, peaceful.
Oh, it might seem surprising, but Babur was really drawn to the tranquility of nature. He was a fierce warrior, no doubt, but his memoirs are filled with descriptions of gardens.
Really?
Oh, yeah, full of details. It shows a different side to him, a side that sought solace and beauty, amidst all the chaos of building an empire.
So these weren't your typical perfectly manicured gardens then?
Not exactly. It was about a deep appreciation for the natural world. And his most notable creation is probably the Ram Bagh in Agra.
The Ram Bagh?
Yes, it's believed to be one of the earliest Mughal gardens in India.
Beautiful.
It's got these intricate water channels and a symmetrical layout. It's heavily influenced by Persian design.
I see.
It reflects this really interesting duality about Babur, right?
The warrior who found peace in nature.
Exactly.
But peaceful gardens weren't the only architectural statements he made. He needed to solidify his authority as a ruler.
Absolutely. And a prime example of that is his mosque at Panipat,
Okay.
built to commemorate his victory over the Lodis in 1526. A pivotal moment. It really marked the beginning of the Mughal Empire in India.
It was a way of saying, we're here to stay.
That's it. A very clear message.
So it seems like he was striking a balance, showcasing his appreciation for beauty and tranquility, while also reminding everyone of his military might.
Precisely. He was a complex figure, and this weaving together of narrative and power through architecture, well, it's a theme that continues with the rest of the Mughal dynasty.
Fascinating. So who comes after Babur in this architectural saga?
His son, Humayun.
Humayun.
Okay, his reign was a bit turbulent, lots of ups and downs, but he left behind an architectural masterpiece.
Yeah.
His tomb in Delhi.
His tomb. Is that where the garden theme continues?
Not quite. Humayun's tomb represents a kind of turning point. It showcases the arrival of a new influence. Persian architecture. This would end up defining Mughal architecture for generations.
So we're seeing how architectural trends transcended borders.
Right. This exchange of ideas. And this one was brought to India by a Persian architect. The Timurid style, you can see it in the tomb's double dome, intricate geometric patterns, the use of red sandstone.
It sounds beautiful.
Oh, it is. And it's important to note that while it's rooted in Persian tradition, it's got elements of Indian craftsmanship as well, creating this fusion that sets the stage for Akbar.
Akbar. His name is still so well known. He's known for his tolerance, his vision for the Mughal Empire. Did that vision translate into his architectural endeavors?
Without a doubt. Akbar, he took Mughal architecture to new heights, literally, with the city of Sikri.
Fatehpur Sikri, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. A city. That's amazing.
And if I remember correctly, it's a fascinating blend of architectural styles.
It is, and that was totally intentional. Akbar, famous for embracing different cultures, he envisioned a city that reflected that.
Like the Jamek Mosque at Fatehpur Sikri.
Yes.
It incorporates elements from pre-Mughal mosques like those at Chanderi and Mandu.
So he was weaving existing Indian traditions into the fabric of the Mughal Empire.
Exactly. Not erasing the past, but building upon it. And then there's the Buland Darwaza.
Oh, yes, the Buland Darwaza, a monumental gateway.
Built to commemorate Akbar's victory in Gujarat.
Of course.
And here's the thing. It's actually taller than the mosque itself.
Wow. I'm picturing a ruler making a grand entrance.
Exactly. A clear symbol of Akbar's ambition and might. The gate, towering over everything else, served as a constant reminder of his victories and power. Akbar's architecture really knew how to combine serene spaces, like those gardens at Fatehpur Sikri, with these really imposing structures, like that gate.
It's quite a journey. We've gone from Babur's tranquil gardens to this monumental gateway celebrating conquest. What direction did Mughal architecture take next?
Well, under Shah Jahan, things became even more refined, more opulent. The use of white marble really takes center stage.
Shah Jahan, the emperor we all associate with the Taj Mahal. But we're not talking about the Taj Mahal today, are we?
We are not. Today, we're focusing on the Red Fort in Delhi, specifically the Diwan-i-Am, the Hall of Public Audience.
Okay.
This is where Shah Jahan would receive guests, hold court. It needed to project a very specific image.
I can only imagine. And I remember when I visited, I was just blown away by the scale of the Diwan-i-Am, all the intricate Pietra d'Or inlay, that sense of magnificence.
Absolutely. And there's symbolism worked right into the design as well, like the scales of justice.
Ah, yeah.
A clear message, Shah Jahan, a just ruler upholding fairness and balance.
Right. And what about those unique baluster columns? I remember those too.
Ah, yes. Those columns, they symbolize Shah Jahan's semi-divine status.
Really?
You see them a lot in Mughal art, these columns flanking royal figures. They're meant to elevate him,
Ah.
above just a king.
Wow. It really is incredible how every detail was imbued with meaning, symbolism woven into the very structure itself.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is how Shah Jahan's influence stretched beyond his own projects. Yes, the Hindu nobility, they were inspired by him and started to incorporate Mughal elements into their own palaces, like Bir Singh Deo's palace at Datia, the Jahangiri Mahal at Orcha. They all have that Mughal touch.
So like his style became a cultural force, spreading beyond the Mughal court.
It did. Mughal architecture wasn't just contained within the empire, it was influencing everyone. But we are talking about regional empires in India, plural. What was happening architecturally outside of the Mughal world at this time, well, that's where things get even more interesting. While the Mughals were busy in the north, other regional powers were developing their own unique architectural styles. Styles that reflected their own values, their ambitions, and how they interacted with each other, of course.
So we've seen how Mughal emperors used architecture to craft these powerful narratives about their reign. But architecture is about more than just individual buildings, isn't it? It's about how they all fit into the bigger picture.
Absolutely, a well-planned city. That wasn't just about looking pretty, it was about improving trade, living conditions, projecting order, all things a ruler needs to stay in power.
Right. And control was definitely something these empires valued. Where can we see that in their approach to urban planning?
Let's go back to Shah Jahan for a second. We talked about the Red Fort, its architecture and symbolism, but it was more than just a palace.
Oh, okay, I'm intrigued. What else was going on at the Red Fort?
It was practically a city within a city, a huge complex, walls, palaces, gardens, mosques, you name it, and a marketplace, all meticulously planned.
Wow. It sounds like a self-contained world.
Like a microcosm of the Mughal Empire itself. All that organization, it was deliberate, a reflection of Shah Jahan's vision. Order, hierarchy, a society functioning perfectly under his rule.
Right. And it wasn't just the Red Fort. Shah Jahan had a hand in shaping Delhi itself, didn't he?
He did. Shahjahanabad, what we now call Old Delhi. He wanted a city that wasn't just about power, but beauty and commerce too, reflecting his ambitions, you see.
Shahjahanabad. The Jama Masjid, Chandni Chowk, it's all so vibrant. Did that vibrancy stem from Shah Jahan's vision?
Oh, absolutely. The wide boulevards, the marketplaces, the mosques and gardens, all carefully planned to create that sense of order, grandeur, and, of course, keep that commerce flowing.
I can only imagine. While these empires loved their aesthetics and control, did they care about things like public amenities? The well-being of their citizens?
Well, our modern ideas about urban planning, public health, social welfare, those were still centuries away. But they did think about certain aspects of city life beyond just looks.
Like what?
Water management was a big one. The Mughals were masters of hydraulic engineering, canals to bring in fresh water, incredible stepwells, the at Grasan Ki Baoli, for instance.
Oh, those stepwells are amazing. They're not just functional either, they're beautiful.
And they served so many purposes. Relief from the heat, places to socialize, venues for rituals.
They were meeting a social need then, creating community.
Exactly. Even without our modern ideas, they understood that public amenities mattered.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
A happy population is less likely to revolt.
Oh.
What about public spaces? Did they plan for those?
Oh, yes. And that brings us back to the gardens. Remember Babur's love of gardens? Well, they weren't all private. Many, especially those built by later Mughal emperors, were open to the public.
Really? So ordinary people could enjoy them too?
Absolutely. A place to enjoy nature, escape the city, participate in public life, festivals, celebrations, royal processions, all designed to connect the ruler with the people.
The power of shared experiences.
Exactly. And think about the Chandni Chowk marketplace, a vital economic center, a melting pot. People from all walks of life exchanging news, transcending those rigid social hierarchies, if only for a moment.
It sounds like the heart of the city.
Yeah.
But was there a downside to all this organization?
Oh, there always is. These cities were marvels of planning and architecture, but they weren't perfect. They had challenges, ones we still see today, actually.
Really? So it wasn't all beautiful gardens and bustling marketplaces? What kind of challenges?
Overcrowding was a big one. These cities grew rapidly. More people meant more strain on resources, infrastructure. It could even strain social cohesion.
More people competing for jobs, housing, food, water. Did they have systems in place to handle that kind of growth?
They tried, but it was always a challenge. Sanitation became a big concern. Waste disposal, clean water access, not easy problems to solve.
The downsides of progress, I guess.
Right. And these challenges didn't affect everyone equally.
The wealthy had it easier.
Oh, absolutely. Big homes, clean water, private gardens, they were insulated from the hardships of the poor. For them, life was a constant struggle.
It seems the gap between rich and poor was a problem even then.
It was. We have accounts of terrible living conditions, disease outbreaks, social unrest. It's a reminder that those palaces and mosques didn't tell the whole story.
Two sides of the same coin. The grandeur and the grime. Opportunity and hardship.
Exactly. And speaking of challenges, let's not forget about crime. Density creates its own problems.
I can imagine. Pickpockets, thieves, things like that.
Oh, and worse. Robbery, violence, all fueled by poverty and limited resources. Even inside those fortified walls, life wasn't always safe.
Right, and on top of that, these cities were often targets of attack, right? Invasion, power struggle.
Yes, security was a constant concern. Those walls and gateways weren't just for show, they were a necessary defense.
So those empires, despite their grandeur, they were fragile.
They were. Susceptible to the same forces of conflict and upheaval that have always shaped history. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges of urban life, but I want to go back to something that really shaped these cities. Religion.
Religion was a powerful force, right?
Yeah,
Shaping their lives, their landscapes.
absolutely. Everything from the placement of buildings to the rhythm of daily life, religion played a role.
Obviously, mosques and temples would be central, but did religion influence the design and layout of the city more broadly?
Oh, without a doubt. The placement of religious structures was very symbolic. They often occupied these prominent positions, at the heart of the city.
Right, the spiritual and social hubs.
Exactly. And think about the orientation of the city itself. Many of them, especially those ruled by Muslim dynasties, were oriented towards Mecca. Mosques faced Mecca, and that influenced the direction of streets, buildings, even the direction of city growth.
So their religious beliefs were literally built into the city's design. What about daily life? Did religious practices have a noticeable impact?
Absolutely. Think about the call to prayer from the mosques 5 times a day.
Shaping the soundscape of the city.
Exactly. And the festivals, the processions, they brought people together, transforming public spaces into these vibrant expressions of faith. But those events weren't just about spirituality. They also had social and political functions.
Strengthening community bonds, reinforcing social hierarchies, legitimizing the ruler.
Precisely. Religion was a unifying force, but also a tool to reinforce power structures.
It's that duality that makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. They didn't separate the sacred from the secular. They understood how deeply they were intertwined. But we've been talking mostly about the Mughals and the Delhi Sultanate. What about those other regional empires? Did they have their own architectural styles and approaches to urban planning? Oh, they did. And this is where those trade networks we talked about earlier become even more important. They weren't just about moving goods. They were about connecting regions, spreading ideas, technologies, artistic styles. It all played a role.
Okay, take me on a whirlwind tour of these architectural landscapes. Where do we go first?
Let's start by heading south to the Vijayanagara Empire.
The Vijayanagara. They were a powerful force in South India.
They were, and their architecture was quite different from the Mughal style.
I bet.
They drew inspiration from earlier South Indian dynasties like the Cholas and Pandyas, but they also mixed in elements from Islamic architecture.
Ah, so we're seeing those trade networks at work again, facilitating those exchanges.
Exactly, and you see these influences in their grand temple complexes, their palaces, their fortifications.
It really reflects their cosmopolitan nature, doesn't it? Their openness to different cultural influences. Can you give me a specific example of this fusion of styles in Vijayanagara architecture?
Of course. The Virupaksha Temple at Hampi, their capital city, is a great example. It's a massive complex. Towering gopurams, these ornate pillared halls, intricate carvings that reflect both Hindu and Islamic artistic traditions.
It's a visual representation of that cultural exchange. What about their palaces? Were they as grand as the Mughal palaces?
They were known for their scale and intricate carvings. Sadly, many were destroyed during conflicts, but we have accounts from travelers, historians who were just amazed by their opulence.
So we have to rely on those descriptions to imagine what they once looked like.
We do. And those accounts talk about grand courtyards, balconies, water features, and a wealth of sculptures celebrating the empire's power, their faith.
Wow, it sounds incredible.
Hmm.
But let's move on. What other architectural treasures await us on this tour?
Okay, let's head north to the Deccan Plateau and the Bahmani Sultanate.
The Bahmanis, another major power. And their architecture, if I remember right, reflect their Islamic faith, but with influences from Persia and even Europe.
You're exactly right. They were major patrons of art and architecture. Their capital, Bidar, became a center of cultural exchange. They brought in artisans from Persia, Central Asia, even Europe. It created a unique architectural style.
Again, those trade routes bringing not just goods, but artistry and ideas.
And the Bahmanis were really good at absorbing these new influences and making them their own.
What are some of the standout examples of Bahmani architecture?
There's the College of Mahmud Gawan in Bidar, a 15th century masterpiece, soaring minarets, tile work, a huge courtyard that housed a library, a mosque, even classrooms.
So it was a religious building, but also a place of learning.
Exactly. And then there are the tombs of the Bahmani sultans, often on raised platforms, domes, arches, stucco work, all reflecting those Persian influences.
The connections are everywhere.
Oh, they are. And it's not just Persia. The Gol Gumbaz in Bijapur, built by one of the later Bahmani successor states, it's got the second largest dome in the world.
Wow.
And its design, European influence, Renaissance to be specific.
It's amazing. A dome that big, built in 17th century India with European influences, it really speaks to how interconnected these empires were.
It does. But what about those empires that weren't so connected to these major trade networks? Did they develop their own unique traditions?
That's a good question. I'm curious to know.
A great example is the Ahom kingdom in Assam.
The Ahoms, they ruled for centuries, but Assam is pretty isolated.
Exactly. And that isolation led to a distinct architectural style. They combined indigenous Assamese styles with influences from neighboring kingdoms.
What did that look like? What kind of buildings did they build?
They were known for using brick and timber. Those were the readily available materials rather than stone. Gracefully curving roofs, intricate wood carvings, a real sense of harmony with the surrounding landscape.
It sounds beautiful and very different from what we've been talking about.
It is. They're temples, palaces, even bridges, all built with those simple but elegant materials. It's a reminder that you didn't need to be part of those big trade routes to be innovative and creative.
So every empire, every region, found its own way to express itself architecturally.
That's right. But let's go back to that connection between architecture and power. We touched on it earlier. How did they use architecture to legitimize their rule?
I'm ready for that crash course in architectural symbolism. What were they trying to say?
Well, think about it. The scale of a building, the materials used, it was all very deliberate. It was all about sending a message.
Okay, I'm listening.
Take those massive domes, the towering minarets, those huge palace complexes.
They were meant to inspire awe, to intimidate.
Look how impressive our buildings are. We must be incredibly powerful. It was a very effective way to project power.
It's not just we're powerful, it's we're powerful and we have amazing taste.
Right. And remember those scales of justice in Shah Jahan's Diwan-i-Am or the baluster columns? They all had symbolic meaning.
Right. Subtle reminders that Shah Jahan was a just and semi-divine ruler.
Exactly. And that connection between architecture and divine authority wasn't unique to the Mughals. Many empires use religion to legitimize their rule.
Aligning themselves with the divine.
Exactly. Location was also important. Forts and palaces often sat on high ground overlooking the city.
Asserting their dominance over the landscape. Look at us.
And those fortifications, the walls, the gateways, they were more than just defensive. They were symbols of power, declarations that the empire could protect its people.
A warning to any potential enemies, don't even try it.
And the gateways, the entrances to cities or palaces, were often decorated with inscriptions, carvings, sculptures that celebrated the ruler's achievements, their piety.
It's all about creating a grand entrance, a carefully staged performance designed to impress, maybe even intimidate.
Exactly. It was all about shaping perceptions, constructing a narrative of power and legitimacy. And those narratives, they were hoping, would last for generations.
It's amazing how much thought went into every detail. But did it work? Did those architectural tactics actually convince people that these rulers were powerful and worthy of their loyalty?
It's a tough question. Power is a tricky thing. But there's no doubt that these projects had a huge impact on people.
If you were just a farmer visiting the capital for the first time and you saw those massive structures, those feats of engineering, how could you not be impressed?
Exactly. And that feeling could lead to acceptance of the ruler's authority. But it wasn't just about manipulating emotions. These buildings also had practical benefits. They provided jobs, stimulated trade, fostered a sense of community. All of those things contributed to a sense of loyalty.
So it was a combination of factors, the awe-inspiring nature of these structures and the tangible benefits they provided.
Right. But we can't forget that power is never absolute. Legitimacy is always being questioned. There were always those who resisted, who saw these buildings as symbols of oppression, extravagance, a system that only benefited the elite.
So these grand buildings weren't some magic solution to quell any dissent.
No, they weren't. And you see those dissenting voices in the historical records. Rebellions, uprisings, criticisms of royal spending, challenges to the social order.
It's good to remember those buildings were just one element in the whole game of power.
Exactly. But you mentioned the fragility of these empires earlier. It's easy to focus on the grandeur and forget that empires eventually fall. What were some of the reasons behind their decline? Usually it was a combination of things, internal and external pressures. The Mughals, for example, they dealt with ambitious nobles, religious tensions, economic decline, plus new powers emerging on their borders, and of course the growing influence of European colonialism. It was a lot to handle.
A perfect storm.
And when those empires weakened, their cities suffered too. We have accounts of cities being abandoned, their infrastructure crumbling, those once grand buildings falling into disrepair. A reminder that nothing lasts forever, not even the most impressive buildings.
It's a bit poetic, isn't it? These symbols of power and ambition ultimately succumbing to the same forces that shape everything else.
It is. But let's shift our focus now. Let's talk about the people who actually lived in these cities. What was daily life like for them? The sights, the sounds, the smells.
Paint me a picture.
Imagine yourself walking through the streets of Shahjahanabad in the 17th century. The air is filled with the aroma of spices, incense, cooking fires. The streets are packed with people, merchants selling their wares, nobles in their palanquins, children running everywhere.
It sounds overwhelming.
It was. And those streets were a mix of everything. Wide avenues and narrow alleyways, grand structures right next to humble dwellings. It was a reflection of the city's social hierarchy.
So you'd have those magnificent palaces and mosques existing alongside poverty and hardship.
Exactly. Those contrasts, those disparities were just a part of daily life.
A real mix of everything. Beauty and hardship, opportunity and oppression.
Right. And those experiences, they varied greatly depending on your social standing, your religion, your job. Life wasn't the same for everyone.
Of course. So let's talk about women. What were their lives like in these cities?
Well, their experiences really depended on their social class. Elite women, they often lived in seclusion, in those grand palaces and harems, but they still held a lot of influence.
So they weren't just shut away. They had a role to play.
Oh, absolutely. Managing households, raising children, influencing political decisions, acting as patrons of the arts. They were busy.
Shaping the cultural landscape, even if they weren't always in the public eye.
Exactly. But for women from the lower classes, life was very different. They often worked outside the home, in the markets, as servants, even in the fields.
Essential to the city's economy, but often overlooked by history.
Sadly, yes. Their stories often go untold. And they face so many challenges: poverty, exploitation, violence.
It's a reminder that even within the same city, human experiences could be so different.
They could. And let's not forget the artisans, the craftsmen, the laborers, the people who actually built these structures.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the beauty of the buildings themselves and forget about the human cost.
Their lives were hard, their work dangerous. They were the backbone of these empires, but their stories are often lost.
Unsung heroes.
They were skilled craftsmen, many of them, organized into guilds with their own traditions, expertise. They passed their knowledge down through generations, creating a legacy that we can still appreciate today.
It's incredible. Those buildings connect us to the people who built them.
They do. And those connections, those human stories, are what make studying history so fascinating. It's not just about facts and dates, it's about understanding people.
Absolutely. But we can't forget those who were marginalized, those who were excluded or exploited. What can we learn about their experiences?
It's important to remember that not everyone had it so good. We're talking about the poor, the untouchables, those denied basic opportunities. Their stories are often reflected in the archaeological record, in the remains of their homes, their tools. We also have literature, religious texts, legal documents. They give us a glimpse into their
It's like
lives.
piecing together a puzzle, isn't it?
Mm,
Trying to reconstruct their lives from these fragments of evidence.
it is. And those fragments tell a story of hardship, discrimination, but also resilience. They created communities, they had traditions, they found ways to survive and find meaning in the face of adversity.
A reminder that even in these powerful empires, people were still struggling,
Yeah.
facing challenges that sadly are still relevant today.
Yes, and their stories challenge us to look beyond those monuments, beyond the words of kings and sultans, to see the human face of history in all its complexity.
Those empires really had a lasting impact. It makes you realize that architecture, it's more than just looks. It's about transmitting ideas, values.
Absolutely. And speaking of transmission, these empires, they were big on knowledge and scholarship too. The Mughals, for instance, they really loved their libraries, their educational institutions.
We talked about the College of Mahmud Gawan, right? The Bahmanis and their dedication to education. Did other empires share that focus on scholarship?
They did. The Vijayanagara Empire, they had these renowned centers of learning that attracted scholars from all over. Their libraries were full of texts on everything from religion and philosophy to math and astronomy.
Knowledge was power.
Exactly. And that knowledge, passed down through generations, it helps us understand them better, their worldview, their beliefs.
It's remarkable. They were building these incredible structures, but also really cultivating a culture of learning, a multifaceted approach to power.
That's a great way to put it. They knew that true power went beyond just military might. It was about intellectual and cultural capital, too.
Okay, so we've covered their architecture, their urban planning, their culture, their intellectual contributions. But what about lessons for us? What can we learn from these empires, from their successes and failures?
That's the big question, isn't it? Their stories, they offer some valuable insights. The nature of power, the importance of cultural exchange, the challenges of managing these large, diverse cities.
Their infrastructure, their adaptability, their support of the arts and sciences. There's a lot to admire. But there are cautionary tales, too.
There are inequality, internal conflicts, external pressures. Even the most impressive empires are fragile.
A reminder that power is fleeting. But even as they declined, their legacies lived on.
And that's what's so great about history, right? It's not just looking back, it's about understanding how the past shapes the present, learning from those who came before us.
Absolutely. It's been an amazing journey exploring these empires. Their stories are still relevant today.
I agree. They remind us of human creativity, ambition, the interconnectedness of our world. They challenge us to build societies that are impressive but also just and sustainable.
And for you, our listener, we hope this has sparked your curiosity. The history of these empires is full of fascinating stories. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep. You never know what you might discover.